In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of corn, there lived a boy named Marcus. He was 14 years old, with a round face, soft brown eyes, and a body that carried more weight than most kids his age. Marcus wasn't like the other boys in school. He didn't play football or basketball, and he certainly didn't care about being popular. Instead, he spent his days sketching superheroes in his notebook, reading comic books during lunch breaks, and dreaming of adventures far beyond the confines of his sleepy little town. Despite his gentle nature, Marcus had always been an easy target for bullies. His size made him stand out, and his quiet demeanor only seemed to invite trouble. At school, 3 boys known as the Crew took particular pleasure in tormenting him. There was Jake, the ringleader, who strutted around like he owned the hallways. Ryan, the tallest of the trio, who used his height to intimidate others. And Chris, the smallest but meanest of the group, whose sharp tongue could cut deeper than any punch. Together they were notorious for making life miserable for anyone they deemed weird, and unfortunately for Marcus, he fit their definition perfectly. Every day after class, the Crew would find some way to humiliate Marcus. Sometimes it was shoving him into lockers or stealing his lunch money. Other times they'd mock his drawings, crumpling up pages of painstakingly crafted artwork just to watch him squirm. Marcus never fought back. He believed in turning the other cheek, telling himself that violence only led to more pain. But deep down, he couldn't help feeling powerless. Each insult stung, each shove left him bruised. Not just physically, but emotionally too. One chilly autumn afternoon, as Marcus trudged home from school, he felt uneasy. The air smelled of damp leaves, and the sky was overcast, casting long shadows across the streets. He noticed the Crew trailing behind him, whispering among themselves. Their footsteps echoed louder with every passing second until finally they caught up to him. Without warning, Jake grabbed Marcus by the arm and yanked him into a narrow alleyway. "Where do you think you're going, fatty?" Jake sneered, his voice dripping with malice. Before Marcus could respond, Ryan snatched his backpack and hurled it against the brick wall. Books, papers, and his beloved comic books spilled onto the ground. Marcus's heart sank as he watched the colorful pages flutter like broken wings. "Look at this loser," Chris jeered, kicking dirt into Marcus's face. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes, not because of the physical pain, but because of the sheer cruelty of it all. For years, he had endured their taunts and beatings, hoping they would eventually grow tired of picking on him. But today, something inside him shifted. Marcus clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into his palms. A strange sensation coursed through his veins, something he couldn't quite explain. It was as if his body was preparing itself for battle, even though his mind screamed at him to stay calm. Suddenly, time seemed to slow down. The world around him blurred, and before he knew it, Marcus found himself standing over the Crew, who were sprawled across the ground, groaning in pain. One of them clutched his jaw, another nursed a bloody nose, and the third lay motionless, staring up at Marcus with wide, terrified eyes. For a moment, Marcus stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Had he done this? How? His hands trembled as he looked down at them, half expecting to see blood or bruises. But there was nothing, just smooth, unmarked skin. Panic set in as reality began to sink in. What if someone saw him? What if the Crew told everyone what happened? Shaking his head, Marcus grabbed his backpack and bolted out of the alley, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. When he reached home, Marcus locked himself in his room and collapsed onto his bed. His mind raced with questions. Was he imagining things? Could he really have taken down 3 older, stronger boys without even realizing it? And if so, where did this sudden strength come from? He tried replaying the scene in his head, but everything was a blur. All he remembered was closing his eyes and wishing for the bullying to stop, and then waking up to find himself victorious. That night, sleep eluded Marcus. Every time he closed his eyes, images of the Crew's battered faces flashed before him. Guilt gnawed at him. He hadn't meant to hurt them, at least not consciously. Yet part of him couldn't deny the thrill of standing up for himself, of finally breaking free from the chains of fear and humiliation that had bound him for so long. As dawn broke, Marcus resolved to get answers. Whatever this newfound power was, he needed to understand it. Little did he know this was only the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. The next morning, Marcus woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. It wasn't fear or excitement, more like a mix of both. As he got ready for school, he couldn't shake the memory of what had happened the day before. He replayed the scene, over and over in his mind. The crew cornering him, their cruel laughter echoing off the walls, and then nothing. Just darkness, followed by the sight of them lying on the ground, groaning in pain. How had he done it? And why did it feel so natural, as if his body already knew how to fight? Walking to school felt different this time. Marcus kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting the crew to jump out from behind a tree or a parked car. But they were nowhere to be seen. When he arrived at school, whispers filled the hallways. Some kids pointed at him, while others avoided eye contact altogether. Word had spread quickly about what happened in the alley. Marcus tried to ignore the stares and focus on getting through the day, but it was hard. For the first time in his life, people seemed genuinely afraid of him. During gym class, things took an unexpected turn. The teacher announced a friendly wrestling match between students to demonstrate proper technique. Most kids groaned, dreading the idea of being paired with someone stronger or faster than themselves. Marcus hesitated when his name was called. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, especially after yesterday's incident. But before he could protest, the teacher paired him with Derek, one of the biggest and toughest boys in the grade. Derek smirked as he stepped onto the mat. "This'll be easy," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus swallowed hard, his palms sweaty as he faced his opponent. The whistle blew, signaling the start of the match. Derek lunged forward, trying to grab Marcus by the shoulders, but something incredible happened. Without thinking, Marcus sidestepped the attack with lightning speed. His movements were fluid, almost instinctive, as if his body had been trained for years. Before Derek could react, Marcus swept his legs out from under him, pinning him to the mat in seconds. The entire gym fell silent. Even the teacher looked stunned. "Well, that was impressive," he said, breaking the awkward silence. Cheers erupted from some of the students while others exchanged bewildered glances. Marcus stood frozen, staring down at Derek, who lay sprawled on the ground, utterly confused. How had he done that? It wasn't just luck. His reflexes, balance, and strength were far beyond anything he'd ever experienced. For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of confidence, though it was quickly overshadowed by confusion and unease. After school, Marcus decided to visit his grandfather, Joe. Grandpa Joe lived in a cozy little house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by towering oak trees and flower beds bursting with color. Marcus loved spending time with his grandfather, who always seemed to have wise advice for every problem. Today, however, Marcus needed more than just words of encouragement. He needed answers. As they sat together on the porch, sipping lemonade, Marcus recounted everything that had happened: the bullying, the alleyway incident, and the wrestling match. Grandpa Joe listened intently, nodding occasionally but saying very little. When Marcus finished, he looked at his grandfather expectantly, hoping for some kind of explanation. Instead, Joe leaned back in his chair and smiled knowingly. "Marcus," he began, his voice calm yet serious, "you come from a long line of fighters." Marcus blinked in surprise. Fighters? His family didn't seem particularly athletic or aggressive. If anything, they were the opposite: kind, quiet, and reserved. "Your father," Grandpa Joe continued, "was one of the best. Strong, disciplined, and quick on his feet. Martial arts ran in his blood, passed down from generation to generation." "But I never saw Dad fight," Marcus interrupted, frowning. "Mom always said he hated violence." "That's true," Joe admitted. "Your parents wanted you to grow up away from all that. They thought shielding you from our family's legacy would give you a better life. But sometimes, no matter how hard we try to suppress it, certain traits lie dormant inside us, waiting for the right moment to awaken." Marcus stared at his hands, turning them over as if searching for some hidden clue. Could it be true? Was he really capable of extraordinary feats because of his family's history? The thought thrilled him, but it also scared him. What if he lost control again? What if he hurt someone unintentionally? Sensing his grandson's unease, Grandpa Joe placed a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. Strength isn't just about physical power, Marcus. It's about knowing when and how to use it. You've already shown great restraint by not seeking revenge against those bullies. That speaks volumes about your character. For the rest of the afternoon, Grandpa Joe shared stories about Marcus's ancestors, men and women who had used their skills not for destruction, but for protection. They weren't just fighters. They were guardians, people who stood up for the weak and defended those who couldn't defend themselves. By the time Marcus left his grandfather's house, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe this newfound strength wasn't a curse, it could be a gift, meant to help him make a difference in the world. Over the next few days, Marcus returned to his grandfather's house every evening. At first, Joe focused on teaching him basic exercises to improve his flexibility and endurance. They practiced stretches, breathing techniques, and simple movements designed to build muscle memory. Marcus found these sessions surprisingly enjoyable. There was something meditative about focusing solely on his body, letting go of the stress and anxiety that had weighed him down for so long. As the weeks went by, their training became more advanced. Joe introduced Marcus to various martial arts styles, including karate, judo, and taekwondo. Each discipline emphasized different aspects of combat: speed, precision, strategy, but they all shared one common principle: respect. Respect for oneself, respect for one's opponent, and respect for the art itself. Marcus soaked up every lesson, amazed by how naturally the techniques came to him. It was as if his muscles remembered moves he'd never learned before. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Marcus asked the question that had been nagging at him for weeks. "Grandpa, why does this feel so familiar? Like I've done it before?" Joe chuckled softly. "Because you probably have. Your body carries memories, Marcus. Memories of your ancestors, of battles fought and lessons learned. All those years ago, when your parents decided to keep you away from this life, they hoped you'd never need to tap into that part of yourself. But now that you have, there's no turning back. The key is to channel it wisely." Though Marcus still struggled with doubts and fears, he couldn't deny the transformation taking place within him. Physically, he was stronger and more agile than ever before. Emotionally, he felt more grounded, less afraid of the challenges life threw his way. Yet, despite his growing abilities, Marcus vowed never to use his strength recklessly. He remembered the pain and humiliation of being bullied, and he refused to become someone who inflicted that kind of suffering on others. Word of Marcus's newfound prowess spread throughout the school. Some students admired him, treating him with a newfound respect. Others avoided him altogether, unsure of what to make of the once quiet boy who could now take down even the strongest opponents. The crew, however, remained hostile. Their pride had taken a beating, and they weren't about to let Marcus forget it. One afternoon, during lunch break, Marcus noticed Jake, Ryan, and Chris lurking near the cafeteria doors. They exchanged glances, whispering conspiratorially. Marcus tensed, bracing himself for another confrontation. Sure enough, as soon as the bell rang, the crew ambushed him outside the science lab. This time, though, Marcus didn't run. He stood, his ground, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. "Back for more?" Jake sneered, cracking his knuckles. Ryan and Chris flanked him, forming a tight circle around Marcus. For a moment, the hallway seemed eerily quiet, as if everyone was holding their breath. "I don't want any trouble," Marcus said calmly, meeting Jake's gaze. "Just leave me alone." Jake laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You think you're tough now? We'll see about that." Before they could make a move, Marcus acted. With lightning-fast reflexes, he disarmed Jake of the stick he was holding and sent Ryan stumbling backward with a well-placed kick. Chris lunged at him, but Marcus sidestepped effortlessly, grabbing his arm and flipping him onto the floor. Within seconds, the crew was defeated, their faces pale with shock and fear. The crowd that had gathered erupted into cheers, but Marcus barely heard them. His focus was on the crew, who scrambled to their feet and fled, vowing never to bother him again. As the noise died down, Marcus realized something important. He hadn't enjoyed hurting them. In fact, he felt sorry for them. Their cruelty stemmed from insecurity, from a desperate need to feel powerful. Deep down, they were just as scared as he had been. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he reflected on everything that had happened. He wasn't the same boy who had cowered in the alley just weeks ago. He was stronger now, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. Yet he knew this was only the beginning of his journey. There were still questions to answer, challenges to face, and lessons to learn. One thing was certain, though. Marcus was ready to embrace whatever came, next armed with courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that true strength lies not in dominance, but in kindness. Over the following weeks, Marcus's life began to change in ways he never could have imagined. Word of his newfound strength and skill spread far beyond the school grounds. Parents whispered about him at PTA meetings, wondering if their children were safe around that boy. Teachers watched him closely during class, as if expecting him to snap at any moment. Even strangers in town started treating him differently, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Despite the attention, Marcus tried to stay grounded. He reminded himself daily that his abilities weren't meant for show or revenge. They were a responsibility, one he had to carry with care. At school, the crew kept their distance, avoiding Marcus like the plague. Their fear was palpable, and though part of Marcus felt relieved, another part of him couldn't help but feel uneasy. He didn't want people to be afraid of him, not his classmates, not his teachers, and certainly not the bullies who once tormented him. He wanted them to see him for who he truly was, a kind-hearted boy who loved art, dreamed big, and believed in doing the right thing. But how could he convince them when every move he made seemed to spark whispers? One day during lunch break, Marcus noticed a group of younger students gathered near the playground. They looked upset, their faces pale and tear-streaked. Curious, Marcus approached cautiously, trying not to draw too much attention to himself. As he got closer, he saw what was happening. A boy named Ethan, a shy sixth grader with glasses too big for his face, was being cornered by two older kids. One of them held Ethan's backpack high above his head while the other taunted him, calling him names like Four Eyes and Nerd. Marcus clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. He recognized the cruelty immediately. It was the same kind of bullying he had endured for years. But instead of rushing in blindly, he took a deep breath and remembered his grandfather's words. Strength isn't just about physical power. It's about knowing when and how to use it. With that thought in mind, Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady and calm. "Leave him alone," Marcus said firmly, his presence commanding immediate attention. The two bullies turned to look at him, their smirks faltering slightly. They exchanged nervous glances, clearly intimidated by Marcus's reputation. Still, they didn't back down right away. "What's it to you, fatty?" One of them spat, though his tone lacked conviction. Marcus ignored the insult and walked closer, positioning himself between Ethan and the bullies. "You don't want to do this," Marcus continued, his voice low but firm. "Trust me, you'll regret it." The bullies hesitated, their bravado crumbling under Marcus's unwavering gaze. Finally, one of them muttered something under his breath and dropped Ethan's backpack onto the ground. Without another word, they turned and walked away, leaving Ethan standing wide-eyed and trembling behind Marcus. Ethan stared up at Marcus, his eyes filled with gratitude and awe. Thank you," he stammered, clutching his backpack tightly. Marcus smiled softly, kneeling down so he was eye level with the younger boy. "You're welcome," Marcus replied. "But remember, you don't need someone else to fight your battles for you. Stand tall, okay? Bullies only pick on people they think are weak. Show them you're stronger than they realize." Ethan nodded, a small smile breaking through his tears. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a sense of peace. Helping someone else had reminded him why he had been given this incredible gift. Not to intimidate or dominate, but to protect and inspire. That evening, Marcus returned to his grandfather's house for another training session. Joe greeted him warmly, handing him a cup of hot chocolate before leading him to the backyard. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby woods. As they warmed up, Joe asked how things were going at school. "It's complicated," Marcus admitted, stretching his arms. "People are treating me differently now. Some are scared of me, and I don't know how to make them understand that I'm still the same person I've always been." Joe nodded thoughtfully. "Change is hard, for you and for them. People are quick to judge based on appearances, especially when those appearances challenge what they're used to. But actions speak louder than words, Marcus. Keep showing them who you are through your deeds, not your defenses." Marcus mulled over his grandfather's advice as they moved into more advanced drills. Tonight, Joe introduced him to a new technique, using momentum and leverage to overpower opponents without relying solely on brute force. It was a subtle yet powerful lesson, one that reinforced the idea that true strength came from strategy and control, not aggression. As the weeks passed, Marcus continued honing his skills, both physically and mentally. He practiced tirelessly, determined to master every move Joe taught him. Yet, despite his progress, doubts lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story, more to his family's legacy, that he hadn't uncovered yet. Why had his parents chosen to hide this part of his heritage? And what else might be waiting for him, buried beneath layers of secrets? One Saturday afternoon, after an intense sparring session, Marcus mustered the courage to ask Joe directly. "Grandpa," he began, wiping sweat from his brow, "you've told me a lot about our family's history as fighters, but is there something else you're not telling me?" Joe paused, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Marcus feared he had crossed a line. Then, with a heavy sigh, Joe motioned for Marcus to sit beside him on the porch steps. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light across the yard. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," Joe confessed, his voice tinged with sadness. "Your father, he wasn't just a martial artist. He was also a protector, a guardian, like I mentioned before. But the world he lived in was dangerous. There were people who sought to exploit his skills, to twist his purpose for their own gain. That's why your parents decided to leave that life behind. They wanted to give you a normal childhood, free from the shadows of violence and conflict." Marcus listened intently, his heart racing. "So, does that mean I'm supposed to take his place? To become a guardian too?" Joe placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Only you can decide that, Marcus. Your father chose to walk away because he believed there was a better path for his family. But now that you've awakened to your potential, the choice is yours. You can continue living quietly, keeping your gifts hidden, or you can step into the role destiny may have prepared for you. Either way, the decision must come from within." The weight of Joe's words settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders. He spent the rest of the weekend lost in thought, weighing his options. On one hand, he cherished the simplicity of his old life, the quiet moments spent drawing superheroes, the joy of reading comic books late into the night. On the other hand, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward something greater. Every time he helped someone in need, every time he stood up against injustice, he felt a spark of purpose ignite within him. Was this what it meant to be a guardian? To use his strength not for personal glory, but to make the world a little brighter for others? By Monday morning, Marcus had made up his mind. He wouldn't let fear or uncertainty hold him back anymore. If his abilities could be used to protect and uplift those around him, then he owed it to himself and to his family's legacy to embrace them fully. Determined, he arrived at school with a renewed sense of confidence. Gone was the timid boy who cowered in hallways and avoided eye contact. In his place stood a young man ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Throughout the week, Marcus put his decision into action. When he saw a teacher struggling to carry a stack of textbooks, he offered to help without hesitation. When a classmate tripped and spilled her lunch tray, He picked up the mess and handed her napkins with a reassuring smile. These small acts of kindness may not have seemed heroic, but they mattered. They showed the people around him that Marcus wasn't defined by his strength, he was defined by his heart. Even the crew noticed the change. Though they still avoided direct confrontation, they stopped spreading rumors about him. Instead, they watched from afar, occasionally exchanging glances that suggested they were rethinking their behavior. Marcus didn't gloat or rub his victories in their faces. Instead, he extended an olive branch, inviting them to join him in organizing a community cleanup event. Surprisingly, they agreed, albeit reluctantly. Working side by side gave them a chance to see Marcus in a new light, not as a threat, but as someone willing to lead by example. As the month drew to a close, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much he had grown. Physically, he was faster, stronger, and more disciplined than ever before. Emotionally, he had learned to balance his fears with his courage, his doubts with his determination. Most importantly, he had discovered the true meaning of strength, the ability to rise above adversity, to stand firm in the face of injustice, and to inspire others to do the same. One evening, as Marcus sat sketching in his notebook, he drew a picture of a superhero unlike any he'd created before. This hero wasn't clad in flashy armor or wielding impossible weapons. Instead, he wore a simple hoodie and carried a sketch pad in one hand, symbolizing creativity and resilience. Above the figure, Marcus wrote a single word: Guardian. Looking at the drawing, Marcus smiled. He realized he didn't need a cape or a mask to be a hero. All he needed was the courage to embrace who he truly was, a protector, a fighter, and above all, as the weeks turned into months, Marcus continued to grow, not just in skill but also in confidence. His reputation as someone who stood up for others spread beyond the schoolyard and into the wider community. Neighbors began approaching him with small requests, helping an elderly woman carry groceries, retrieving a lost pet from a tree, or even mediating disputes between kids on the playground. At first, Marcus worried that people might start relying on him too much, but he soon realized that these acts of kindness brought him joy. Each time he helped someone, he felt a little lighter, as if he was shedding the weight of his past fears and doubts. Despite the positive changes in his life, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was waiting for him. It wasn't just curiosity about his family's legacy. It was a deep, unshakable sense that his abilities had a purpose far greater than protecting classmates or fetching stray cats. This thought gnawed at him during quiet moments, especially late at night when he lay awake sketching superheroes in his notebook. Who was he really meant to protect? And from what? One chilly Saturday morning, Marcus woke up to find a note slipped under his bedroom door. The handwriting was familiar, his grandfather's neat cursive script. The message was brief. Meet me at the old barn by noon. Bring your training gear. Intrigued, Marcus quickly dressed and headed out, his mind racing with possibilities. What could Grandpa Joe have planned this time? The old barn stood on the edge of town, surrounded by tall grass and rustling trees. It had been abandoned for years, its wooden walls weathered and its roof sagging slightly under the weight of time. When Marcus arrived, he found Joe waiting for him, dressed in traditional martial arts attire. Beside him was a man Marcus didn't recognize, a tall figure with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. The stranger wore a black jacket embroidered with a symbol Marcus had never seen before, a circle encasing a dragon coiled around a shield. This is Master Lin, Joe introduced, gesturing toward the man. He's here to teach you something. I can't. Marcus frowned, glancing between his grandfather and the mysterious visitor. Teach me what? Master Lin stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. Your grandfather has done an excellent job laying the foundation for your training, but there are skills beyond physical combat, skills that require focus, intuition, and understanding of the world around you. These are the tools of a true guardian. Before Marcus could respond, Master Lin motioned for him to follow. Inside, the barn. The air was cool and musty, filled with the scent of aged wood and hay. In the center of the space, a series of mats had been laid out, forming a makeshift dojo. On one side, a rack held various weapons, wooden staffs, bamboo swords, and even throwing stars. Marcus's heart raced. He had never trained with weapons before, and the idea both thrilled and intimidated him. For the next several hours, Master Lin pushed Marcus harder than anyone ever had. They started with basic exercises designed to improve balance and coordination, using a long wooden staff as an extension of his body. At first, Marcus struggled to control the weapon, fumbling awkwardly whenever Master Lin instructed him to strike or block. But as the session progressed, he began to find his rhythm. The staff felt less like a foreign object and more like a natural part of him, flowing smoothly with each movement. Next, they moved on to sparring drills. Master Lin paired Marcus against multiple opponents at once, forcing him to think strategically and anticipate attacks from all directions. It was exhausting work, but Marcus thrived under the pressure. With every dodge, parry, and counterattack, he felt himself growing stronger, not just physically but mentally. By the end of the day, sweat drenched his clothes, and his muscles ached, but he couldn't stop smiling. For the first time, he understood what it meant to push past his limits. When the session ended, Master Lin handed Marcus a small leather-bound book. This contains ancient teachings passed down through generations of guardians, he explained. Study it carefully. Understanding the philosophy behind your skills is just as important as mastering the techniques themselves. That evening, back at home, Marcus opened the book and began reading. The pages were filled with stories, proverbs, and lessons about courage, humility, and justice. One passage stood out to him. A true guardian does not seek glory or recognition. Their strength lies not in dominating others, but in lifting them up. To protect is to serve is to lead. The words resonated deeply with Marcus. He realized that being a guardian wasn't just about fighting, it was about creating a better world, one act of kindness at a time. Inspired, he spent the rest of the night sketching new ideas in his notebook, imagining ways he could use his abilities to make a difference. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his training with renewed determination. Under Master Lin's guidance, he learned to wield different weapons, honed his reflexes, and developed a keen awareness of his surroundings. Yet, no matter how challenging the sessions became, Marcus never lost sight of why he was doing this. Every punch, kick, and strike reminded him of his mission, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Meanwhile, life at school continued to evolve. Word of Marcus's heroics had reached even the youngest students, inspiring many to stand up against bullying and unfairness. Teachers praised him for setting such a positive example, while parents thanked him for making the school a safer place. Even the crew, once his biggest tormentors, seemed to have turned over a new leaf. Though they still kept their distance, they occasionally joined Marcus in organizing events like charity drives and cleanup campaigns. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere at school shifted, from one of fear and division to one of unity and hope. But not everyone was pleased with Marcus's rise to prominence. A group of older teenagers known for causing trouble around town began targeting him. Calling themselves the Ravens, they prided themselves on being untouchable, ruling the streets with intimidation and violence. Their leader, a burly boy named Victor, took particular offense to Marcus's growing influence. "Who does he think he is?" Victor sneered to his gang one evening. "Some kind of superhero? We'll see how tough he really is." It wasn't long before the Ravens made their move. One Friday afternoon, as Marcus walked home from school, he noticed a group of figures lurking near the park. His instincts kicked in immediately, alerting him to danger. Sure enough, as he approached, the Ravens stepped out from the shadows, blocking his path. Victor cracked his knuckles, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Well, look who we have here," Victor taunted. "The big bad fighter everyone's talking about. Let's see if you're as tough as they say." Marcus didn't flinch. He stood tall, his posture relaxed yet ready. "I don't want any trouble," he said evenly. "Just let me pass." Victor laughed, a harsh mocking sound. "Oh, we're not letting you pass until you learn your place. Nobody messes with the Ravens and gets away with it. Without warning, two members of the gang lunged at Marcus, aiming punches and kicks. But Marcus was prepared. Drawing on everything he'd learned from Joe and Master Lin, he moved with precision and grace, dodging their attacks and countering with swift, calculated strikes. Within minutes, both attackers were on the ground, groaning in pain. Victor's expression darkened. "You're gonna regret that," he growled, signaling the rest of his gang to attack. This time, Marcus faced multiple opponents simultaneously, just as he had practiced with Master Lin. Using his staff, a gift from Joe, he blocked blows, swept legs, and disarmed his foes with ease. The fight was chaotic, but Marcus remained calm, trusting his instincts and staying focused on his goal, neutralizing the threat without causing unnecessary harm. By the time it was over, the Ravens lay defeated, sprawled across the grass and pavement. Victor stared at Marcus in disbelief, his bravado replaced by fear. You're crazy," he stammered before turning and running, his gang scrambling after him. Breathing heavily, Marcus surveyed the scene. His body ached and his hands trembled slightly, but he felt a surge of pride. Not because he had won the fight, but because he had protected himself and sent a clear message. No one would intimidate him or anyone else anymore. Later that night, as Marcus reflected on the encounter, he realized something profound. The Ravens weren't so different from the crew, or even from him in some ways. They acted out of fear and insecurity, seeking power to mask their own weaknesses. It wasn't hatred that drove them, it was pain. And while Marcus couldn't excuse their actions, he understood them. Maybe in time they too could change. With that thought, Marcus closed his notebook and climbed into bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and inspire. But for now, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be, on the path to becoming a true guardian. The days following the confrontation with the Ravens marked a turning point for Marcus. News of his victory spread quickly, not just through the school, but throughout the entire town. People whispered about him in hushed tones, calling him the protector or the guardian. Some admired his courage and strength, while others viewed him with suspicion, wondering if he might become too powerful to control. Despite the mixed reactions, Marcus remained steadfast in his mission. He knew that fear often stemmed from misunderstanding, and he was determined to prove that his abilities were meant to uplift, not dominate. One afternoon, as Marcus walked home from school, he noticed a flyer taped to a lamppost. It advertised a community meeting at the local library, urging residents to discuss rising concerns about safety in the neighborhood. Curious, Marcus decided to attend. When he arrived, the room was packed with people, young and old, families, and individuals, all eager to voice their opinions. As he took a seat near the back, Marcus scanned the crowd, recognizing familiar faces, shopkeepers, teachers, parents, and even some of his classmates. The meeting began with introductions, followed by an open forum where attendees shared their worries. One elderly woman spoke about frequent break-ins at her apartment complex. A young mother expressed concern about her children walking to school alone. Others mentioned vandalism, petty theft, and gangs like the Ravens causing trouble late at night. Each story painted a picture of a community struggling to feel safe and secure. When it came time for suggestions, Marcus hesitated before raising his hand. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, but he felt compelled to speak. Standing up, he cleared his throat nervously. "I know things seem scary right now," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "But I believe we can make our neighborhood safer, not just by relying on police or security cameras, but by looking out for each other. If we work together, we can create a network of support that makes everyone stronger." His words earned scattered applause, though. Some skeptics muttered under their breath. After the meeting ended, several people approached Marcus to thank him for speaking up. Among them was Mrs. Patel, the owner of a small grocery store down the street. Her shop had been targeted multiple times by thieves, leaving her frustrated and afraid. "You're right," she said, smiling warmly. We need to stick together, but tell me, how do you suggest we start? Marcus thought for a moment. Maybe we could organize patrols? Not armed guards or anything like that. Just volunteers keeping an eye out for suspicious activity. And maybe we could set up a system where neighbors check in on each other regularly. Small steps can make a big difference. Mrs. Patel nodded enthusiastically. That sounds like a plan. Count me in. Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life. With help from Grandpa Joe, Master Lynn, and a growing group of volunteers, they established what became known as the Neighborhood Watch Initiative. Flyers were distributed, schedules created, and communication channels set up via text messages and phone calls. At first, participation was modest, but as word spread about the initiative's success in deterring crime, more and more people joined in. Marcus played a key role in leading the effort, often patrolling the streets himself alongside other volunteers. Armed with nothing more than a flashlight and a whistle, he roamed the area during evenings and weekends, ensuring everything was calm and orderly. His presence alone seemed to deter troublemakers. Even the ravens kept their distance, wary of crossing paths with him again. Despite the progress, Marcus couldn't ignore the toll this responsibility was taking on him. Between training sessions with Master Lynn, schoolwork, and coordinating the watch program, he barely had time to rest. Exhaustion crept into his bones, and there were moments when he questioned whether he was doing enough or too much. Was he spreading himself too thin? Could one person really make a lasting impact? These doubts weighed heavily on him until one evening as he sat on the porch with Grandpa Joe. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Joe handed him a cup of tea and asked gently, "How are you holding up, Marcus?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Grandpa. Sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, there's always more to fix. More problems, more people who need help. How do I keep going without burning out?" Joe smiled knowingly. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Marcus. Being a guardian doesn't mean carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It means inspiring others to carry their share of the load. Look at what you've already accomplished. You've brought people together, given them hope, and shown them that change is possible. That's more than most people achieve in a lifetime." Marcus nodded slowly, letting his grandfather's words sink in. He realized that leadership wasn't about doing everything himself. It was about empowering others to take action. With renewed clarity, he resolved to delegate tasks more effectively and encourage others to step into leadership roles within the initiative. Around this time, another challenge emerged, one far greater than any Marcus had faced before. Late one night, as he returned home from a patrol, he received a frantic call from Ethan, the sixth grader he'd helped months earlier. "Marcus, please come quick," Ethan cried, his voice trembling. "There's someone breaking into my house." Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed his phone and rushed to Ethan's neighborhood. When he arrived, he found chaos unfolding. Lights flickered inside the house and faint shouts echoed from within. Neighbors gathered outside, unsure of what to do. Marcus quickly assessed the situation, then called the police before approaching the front door cautiously. Inside, he discovered two masked intruders rummaging through the living room, stuffing valuables into bags. They hadn't noticed him yet, giving Marcus a brief window to act. Drawing on all his training, he moved silently, positioning himself strategically to neutralize the threat. In a swift motion, he disarmed one intruder and subdued the other, pinning them both to the ground until authorities arrived. Ethan and his family emerged from hiding, tears streaming down their faces. "Thank you," Ethan's mother sobbed, clutching Marcus tightly. "You saved us." Though relieved, Marcus couldn't shake the gravity of what had happened. This wasn't just vandalism or petty theft. It was a dangerous invasion that could have ended tragically. It underscored the importance of his role as a protector and reinforced his commitment to making the community safer. In the aftermath of the incident, Marcus gained even more respect and trust from the townspeople. Parents thanked him for safeguarded. Their homes and kids looked up to him as a real-life hero. Yet amidst the praise, Marcus stayed humble. He reminded himself daily that his purpose wasn't to be idolized, it was to serve, to inspire, and to protect. As winter approached, Marcus continued balancing his responsibilities with his personal growth. Training sessions with Master Lin grew more intense, focusing on advanced techniques and mental discipline. Marcus learned to harness his emotions, channeling anger and frustration into fuel for his actions, rather than letting them cloud his judgment. These lessons proved invaluable, especially during high-pressure situations. One snowy evening, as Marcus reviewed patrol schedules at the library, he overheard a conversation between two teenagers discussing plans to vandalize a nearby park. Without revealing his identity, he followed them discreetly, preventing the damage before it occurred. Later, instead of punishing them, he sat down with the teens and listened to their grievances. Many were angry about feeling ignored by adults and powerless to effect change. Moved by their honesty, Marcus invited them to join the Neighborhood Watch initiative, offering them a chance to channel their energy into something positive. Slowly, but surely, Marcus began seeing shifts, not just in the community but within himself. He no longer doubted his place in the world. Every challenge he faced, every life he touched, reaffirmed his belief that true strength lay in compassion and unity. He understood now that being a guardian wasn't a title or a role, it was a way of living. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit up the sky and cheers erupted across the town, Marcus stood atop a hill overlooking the neighborhood. Beside him stood Grandpa Joe, Master Lin, and a handful of friends who had supported him throughout his journey. Together, they watched as the old year faded into memory and a new one dawned full of promise. "You've come a long way, Marcus," Joe said, softly placing a hand on his shoulder. "But remember, the road ahead will test you in ways you can't imagine. Stay true to yourself and you'll always find your way." Marcus nodded, a smile spreading across his face. For the first time in his life, he felt truly ready. Not just to face whatever challenges lay ahead, but to embrace them with courage and grace. As the clock struck midnight, signaling the start of a new chapter, Marcus made a silent vow to continue protecting, serving, and leading, not because he had to, but because it was who he was meant to be. As spring arrived, bringing with it warmer weather and blooming flowers, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much his life had transformed over the past year. What started as a journey of self-discovery had evolved into something far greater, a mission to protect and inspire those around him. Yet, despite his accomplishments, Marcus knew that his work was far from over. The challenges he faced were no longer just about physical strength or skill. They tested his character, resilience, and ability to lead. One Saturday morning, as Marcus prepared for another training session with Master Lin, he received an unexpected visit from Detective Harris, a local police officer who had taken notice of Marcus's efforts in the community. Harris was a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He carried himself with authority but spoke with genuine warmth. "Marcus," Harris began, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, "I need your help with something important." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" Harris leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "We've been tracking a group involved in organized crime, drugs, theft, and worse. They've been operating under the radar for months, preying on vulnerable families in our town. We believe they're planning something big, possibly targeting businesses during the upcoming festival weekend." Marcus listened intently, his heart sinking at the thought of innocent people being hurt. "How can I help?" he asked without hesitation. Harris hesitated, clearly weighing his words carefully. "You're not law enforcement, Marcus, and we can't officially involve you in this investigation. But your instincts and skills could make a difference. If you see anything suspicious, or if anyone approaches you with information, we'd appreciate it if you'd pass it along immediately." Marcus nodded firmly. "You can count on me." Over the next few days, Marcus kept a close watch on the neighborhood, paying extra attention to areas where trouble might arise. With the festival only a week away, tensions ran high. Vendors set up colorful stalls, musicians practiced their performances, and families decorated their homes in anticipation of the celebration. Amidst the excitement, however, Marcus remained vigilant, knowing that danger lurked beneath the surface. His suspicions were confirmed when Ethan approached him one afternoon after school. "Marcus," Ethan whispered urgently, glancing around, to ensure no one was listening. "Some older kids tried to sell me something weird yesterday. They said it would help me fit in. I didn't take it, but I think they're part of whatever you're looking for." Marcus's stomach tightened. Drugs. This was exactly what Detective Harris had warned about. "Do you know where I can find them?" he asked gently, careful not to alarm Ethan further. Ethan nodded. "They hang out near the old factory on the outskirts of town. Please be careful, Marcus." That evening, Marcus met with Grandpa Joe and Master Lin to discuss the situation. Both men agreed that confronting the criminals directly would be reckless, especially since Marcus wasn't trained for such high-stakes scenarios. Instead, they devised a plan. Marcus would gather evidence discreetly and report back to Detective Harris, allowing the authorities to handle the rest. Under the cover of darkness, Marcus ventured toward the abandoned factory, his movements silent and deliberate. Using techniques taught by Master Lin, he navigated the shadows, avoiding detection while observing the activity inside. Through a cracked window, he spotted several figures exchanging bags filled with unknown substances. One of them appeared to be giving orders, a man with a scar running down his cheek. Memorizing details and snapping photos with his phone, Marcus retreated quickly, ensuring he left no trace of his presence. By dawn, he delivered the evidence to Detective Harris, who thanked him solemnly. "You've done good, Marcus," Harris said. "Now let us take it from here." The following day, news broke that the police had dismantled the criminal operation, arresting key members and confiscating large quantities of illegal drugs. The town breathed a collective sigh of relief, and many credited Marcus's efforts, even though his involvement remained anonymous. For Marcus, the victory felt bittersweet. While he was glad the threat had been neutralized, he couldn't shake the realization that there would always be new dangers lurking, waiting to emerge. Despite the weight of this knowledge, Marcus refused to let it dampen his spirit. He continued leading the Neighborhood Watch initiative, mentoring younger students and training tirelessly with Master Lin. Each day brought new opportunities to grow, not just as a fighter but as a leader and protector. People looked to him for guidance, trusting him to steer them through difficult times. And though the responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming, Marcus reminded himself that he wasn't alone. His grandfather, Master Lin, and countless others stood beside him, ready to support him whenever needed. One sunny afternoon, as Marcus walked home from school, he noticed a group of children playing tag near the park. Their laughter echoed through the air, filling him with a sense of hope. Among them was Ethan, now confident and smiling, surrounded by friends. Seeing this simple yet profound moment reminded Marcus why he had chosen this path: to create a world where kids like Ethan could grow up safe, happy, and free from fear. Later that evening, as Marcus sat sketching in his notebook, he drew a picture unlike any he'd created before. It depicted a young boy standing tall against a backdrop of a thriving community, families walking hand in hand, shops bustling with customers, and children laughing freely. Above the image, he wrote a single phrase: "Strength through unity." Looking at the drawing, Marcus realized that his journey wasn't just about fighting or protecting. It was about building connections, fostering trust, and inspiring others to believe in themselves. He didn't need a cape or a mask to be a hero. All he needed was the courage to embrace who he truly was: a guardian, a leader, and above all, a good person. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the room, Marcus closed his notebook and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new chances to grow and serve. But for now, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be, on the path to becoming someone who made a difference. And so, Marcus stepped boldly into the future, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Whether it was standing up to bullies, organizing community patrols, or mentoring the next generation of guardians, he vowed to stay true to his values and his purpose: because deep down, he understood that true strength wasn't measured by victories or accolades. It was measured by the lives he touched and the legacy he left behind. In the end, Marcus proved that heroes aren't born, they're made. Through kindness, courage, and unwavering determination, anyone could rise above adversity and become a beacon of hope for others. And as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, the world would always have guardians like Marcus to light the way.